All right, Battletech fans, so here we are with another episode of Battletalk. Please excuse my voice. I'm dealing with a little bit of a vocal issue right now. I'm kind of on the tail end of it. We're getting over it. But I'm sitting here with our featured player for Fayetteville, Arkansas. This is Chris Cox, so say hello to the folks at home, sir.
Hello, Sorettes. Your fellow clanner.
All right, we got a filthy clanner in the house. I like it. So we got a real interesting game coming up here. We're going to head out to Fayetteville here in a few days, and we're going to have ourselves a good old-fashioned slobber knocker. Like the folks at home, we'll put the lance up here on the screen in just a little bit, but these lances are just like two slugger lances, just ugh. And I'm real curious. We're going to start with how you got into Battletech, but then I want to ask you how you feel like you're going to do, kind of what your thoughts are. So tell me that story. Tell me how you got into this whole thing.
Well, growing up, I was always watching mecha shows. I grew up in the 90s, and I saw Gundam Wing when it first aired on Toonami, and I was hooked on the mecha, and I started branching out. I started finding stuff like Macross. I seen that when I got able to get onto YouTube. And at that time, I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic, and I was getting out of it, and I walked into the game store one day, and this group of guys was playing, and there was one of them, if I remember correct. I'll explain who they are later in the video, but it was. I felt like I had walked into like a mystical realm almost, but I time traveled on a TARDIS in a sense.
All right, fellow Whovian, very nice.
And I guess I learned the term now is I finally met what a true neckbeard was in the sense when I was playing this game.
Okay,
and I just see them sitting there, lobbing, fighting, just criticals, and I'm hearing this like, oh no! And I'm just like, what is this? And I see them playing this game, and I'm just like, what is this? I am intrigued. And they said, this is Battletech. I said, what's Battletech? They said, this is kind of like, throw us up another 1,000 years into the future, and we evolved from infantry warfare and tanks to piloting giant robots. In a sense, they said it is giant stompy robots with Rock'em Sock'em and thrown in there. And I was like, sold! And I believe at that time they were selling one of the anniversary sets that had the Atlas on the box that was just staring down at everything, and it was just the most intimidating Atlas picture I had ever seen. And at that time, I didn't know what an Atlas was.
Right.
But it was the most grim-lookingest face I had ever seen. This Atlas's arm was chewed up, and you just see these infantry running, and there's this one little bitty guy getting stepped on, and I'm just like, oh god, this looks good. That's the one I started this whole escapade into. I was pretty happy with what it gave. It was very generous at that time. 24
absolutely.
What you got in there was better than 40K.
Wow. Well, my sister actually got me that set for Christmas. I believe it was 2014 she sent me that because she knew I was into it. And I went looking through it, and I even did like an unboxing video of it. And I'm looking at these miniatures going, God, this is like the best quality I've seen in 20 years. I haven't seen anything like this. And they just keep getting better and better. But I mean, for that set, you spent $60 on it and got 24 mechs plus the 2 premium mechs. I was like, you'll never see another box set like that ever again. That was probably the best deal that Catalyst ever gave you.
I think at that time I got it for like $50 because it had been sitting on the shelf long enough to gather dust. And it was a steal at that time. I had traded in almost $500 worth of Magic.
Okay.
But that's when I was playing competitively, and I learned real quick how fast Magic is a sinkhole.
Oh,
then
yeah, God.
And then learned how that turns into a sinkhole as well.
It can, but I mean, it doesn't have to. But it's not like Magic where you have to spend $500 on your mana base if you want to even have a shot at being competitive. Whereas in Battletech, you can take certain miniatures and balance it out with battle value, and you'll be all right.
And our group slowly growed. I've been playing since, I want to say 14, 15, up till now, until we officially hit the Dark Ages where we lost communications with people.
Right.
That's what it feels like, and I've just been sitting here trolling away in space, building mechs, selling them.
This is kind of interesting because you're, in my experience anyway, in my field, you're a relatively new player. Because I've been doing this since I was 13, but I always like seeing new people come into the game. I always like seeing welcoming, inviting groups, that kind of thing, the kind of thing you're trying to talk about. And so that leads me to my next question, which is this lance you've built. I understand that you sat down with maybe one or two other people and came up with this lance. I don't know. But you've got just a lot of classic, like, heavy hitters in this lance. You've got the Atlas, the AS-7D. You've got the ON-1K Orion, which is just a bullet sponge. I used that to great effect in Season 1 out in Harrison, Arkansas, as it was. The classic 6R Warhammer. You've got the Merrick Wolverine. So tell me how that whole thing came about. Like, did you sit down and have this, like, committee type discussion with your friends and say, okay, well, what can we come up with to just knock this guy's teeth down his throat? Like, how did that work out?
Oh, what happened is I asked him I told them about the show and everything, and I've been trying to get them to watch a little bit of it. So when it drops and they have an opportunity, they're going to get to watch me on the holovid and at least see what mistakes I made and said, okay, this is what you should have done. I've had a little bit of field practice testing out the units.
Yep.
My group is NWA of Northwest Arkansas Battle Group for Battletech. And I believe when you were in Harris, there was one guy that we play with. His name is Rob. Well, in hindsight, he is truly Steiner's evil genius when it comes to tactics.
Okay.
He may be deceiving, but I have seen what he does with a Marauder, and he is terrifying. I think he owns a miniature of a Marauder stepping on an elemental.
Okay, fair enough. I do enjoy the Marauder.
And he's notoriously known for bringing 4 Atlases to a Scout Lance.
Right, the classics, Steiner Scout Lance, those guys. So did you guys come up with this lance, like I say, in like a committee? Did you sit down and say, okay, well, what can we do here?
Yes, so I got to thinking about it, and I was like, hey guys, what should I do with him? Like, what kind of game mode should we play? And Kevin said, why don't you just do a straight up search and destroy? I've played it a lot of times, and we use the visible line of sight, all that, and it's been a minute, so I'll be a little bit rusty, but once my dice wake up, it might be a different story.
Okay.
I started to think, and I thought, you know what, if we're going to do it, let's do 30-25. That's a good pinnacle point to start a game for introductions.
Sure.
And then I started thinking, what's a mech to bring that represents me? And then I thought, wait a minute, what mechs represent a lance that represents our group that plays? And I was like, why not just do a mercenary unit? Do my favorite mercenary unit I ever came up with when I got introduced to a campaign for 30-25. I think it was during the Capellan War, Succession War, I was introduced to that.
Okay.
So I got to experience, and at that time I took an Atlas, and I didn't know how good an Atlas was.
Sure.
I didn't know what it could do, but then I really learned after about 24 missions later how nefariously evil I had become and become wanted, that there was bounties out for me. Because I had killed, I think his kill streak was about 12 mechs before he lost his arm, but that was a hardcore thing. But I proceeded to create this lance using mechs that I know everyone was notorious for using. Kevin, playing Davian, of course, he loves running the Warhammer.
Sure.
And he told me, with this Warhammer, you kind of be a support with it. You can't really get up in there and fight because it's not going to have the armor to stay there and take the punches. But if you get up close enough and they get stupid to do that, just show them what a Davian love is. And playtesting, I saw what happens when a Warhammer unloads Alpha Strikes into a Grand Dragon. The Grand Dragon dies horribly.
Yep. As long as you don't have anything explode from your heat after all that,
well,
then you're good.
He told me the first thing to do, and I have kept this strategy going, dump the machine gun ammo out of it.
Oh yeah, right off the bat.
Yeah, thinner torso machine guns. I'm sad to say this, but that is what has turned me away from 30-25 Phoenixes, because my curse with them getting ammo, it's always the first turn, Snake Eyes, center torso, ammo crit. Like, I don't even get the first shot. It's not even funny.
Yep, I know that frustration well, trust me.
But then Marty, he plays House Merrick, and he said, well, you either take the and I had another lance built too that would have compensated for the differences. but I went with the true and tested Atlas. I was like, okay, let's throw these in.
Sure.
So Marty's mech ended up being the Orion 1K because it's a classic. House Merrick mainly uses it. You know, you don't see it very often in other houses, so it's one of those mechs that it's terrifying because I've fought against it. I've seen him use it to great effect. Like, before a Timberwolf even walks out on the field, I'm more scared of an Orion or an Atlas or anything like that before we start getting into the WYSIWYG stuff.
Huh. See, the Orion is just one of those, it's like a tank, man. It's such a bullet sponge, that particular variant. It's got just massive amounts of armor, and it's got enough punch to, you like the 10 cannon, it's got the LRM-15s, the SRMs, the medium lasers, so it can do some damage, but the main strength of that mech is its staying power. And trust me, I knew that when I was down in Harrison, and I used it, and we just had this hunchback coming up on me, and I was just like, that's fine. If this happens, I can take it. And knowing that you can take a shot like a 20 cannon to the chest and be like, cool, whatever.
The Orion, when I looked at it, it is balanced when it comes to speed, firepower, armor, and heat sink capability. It just fits that role perfectly. It is a pocket knife tool mech.
Sure.
If I was to look. And then we come into Alex. He was a little sad that he couldn't play a Rook, which is his all-star mech, if he didn't choose the Rashasha.
Yep.
But he chose that variant. He was going to go with Kurita's, 5'8", lasers all day, hot mech.
Sure.
But he said, I'd rather have the mobility with the 5.85 because I still get my lasers and I still get my jumps. And that's just how he is. He likes to flank. He likes to be sneak attacks. And so that's why he decided he was going to play the skirmisher / back protector attacker kind of role. Like, he's just going to be that guy that's like, hey, either got your back or I'm taking your back.
Okay. So that's an interesting question. Am I going to be playing up against multiple people here, or is it just going to be you and me?
It's just going to be you and me. They're going to be there in the pilot mechs, and hopefully I don't get them killed.
Well, you can just use the last, the last second ejection rule, if nothing else. I'm not out to do a TPK here.
Oh, they're eject unless they get headshotted and die from some mysterious, which I'm notorious for. And for me, as the Atlas, I kind of feel bad because I tend to favor House Liao. So I don't always get access to the best mechs, but I always get those fun toys.
Sure. See, and it was an interesting lance because I did the math on it, and I was like, gosh, this comes out to almost 11,000 battle value, which you don't usually see lances with battle value that high in 3025. And I was just like, wow, I'm shocked. I have a lot of room to mess around here. And so I sat down and I thought to myself, okay, well, what am I going to do? And that's when I came up with the Imp, the Awesome, the Warhammer, and the Griffin.
Upon looking at the Force, I was a little shocked and terror at what was there, because I was like, wait a minute, what's an Imp? I knew what the Warhammer was. I was like, okay, so I know this variant. I know this Griffin. And I know the Awesome. The Awesome is just straight up a bruiser to begin with. Armor and firepower, and it has the staying power. Something I'm going to have to worry about. But when I looked at the Imp, and I was like, what is an Imp? I don't remember an Imp. And then I looked, and I saw PPC. Okay. PPC. Okay. LRM-15. Not good. 5 medium lasers. Okay, now I'm in trouble.
Once it gets up there.
And then I started looking, and I'm like, I see almost 8 PPCs on the battlefield.
Well, there is 8. There's exactly 8.
And then I'm thinking, this just went from a bruising game to a long-range tackle.
My original goal was, can I get 10? But I was like, no, I can't get 10. 8 was the closest I could get. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'll take that.
It's 10 with 2 Hellstars.
Right, but in the era, I was like, 9 might have been pushing it, but I was like, you know what? 8 seems safe.
I thought about bringing some peoples. I could have had some fun with some Von Luckners on you.
Right.
I did kind of try to see how your strategies work, but your games are very sporadical on how you play at times, so there's no real way to deal with you, and I'm scared of your lance.
You never know what's going to happen, Daddy. Let me ask you this. Having said that, how do you feel like your chances are? Like, when it comes down to it, how do you feel like you're going to do here? Do you feel like you have a good shot? Do you feel like, oh boy, I'm on the ropes here, like behind the 8 ball? How do you feel?
Well, I talked with Kevin about it. He's usually my tactical advisor because me and him hang out quite a bit. Good family friend. I got to looking at it in this perspective. You've got firepower and armor. I've got armor and mobility on my side. I'm a little bit more maneuverable than you, but I lack in the firepower department. In hindsight, if I don't run at you and get up close and personal, I'm not going to stand a chance at a long-range pop fight.
Right.
Because you will sit there and just focus and drill through me real quick.
Could.
And considering the Atlas's loadout versus the Imp, it's terrifying how much more ammo I'm carrying than your Imp.
Yeah, the Imp has a little bit, but it's mainly just energy-based, which is why the Wolf's Dragoons favor it so heavily.
I also got to thinking maybe I can get into your back arc, and then I realized how much more armor there is on the back of an Imp to an Atlas, but then it's reversed on the front. There's less armor on the front of the Imp than there is the Atlas. So it's kind of a fair fight between those two juggernauts.
Yep. I think, in fact, the only mech on my side that doesn't match the speed of somebody on your side is the Awesome, because you've got Warhammer 4.6, you've got the Atlas 3.5, you've got the Orion is a 4.6, and the Wolverine is 5.85. And the only guy I don't match there is with the Awesome, who's a 3.5. And so I think that's the only one where it's not a push. So, and I was okay with that because I'm like, well, it's an Awesome, and you can never go wrong with an Awesome.
Marty showed me that, and that was the other thing, is I had a second lance that I was going to put together, which was going to consist of the Awesome 8Q, a Catapult 1B, a Grand Dragon, and a Enforcer.
Okay.
And that's pretty much roughly the same setup, but there'd be even more mobility, less fire, less armor. It still would be chaotic in a sense, but I went with the force that seemed to have the more staying power, the more robust. I can take a shot and still dish out.
Sure.
But now it's kind of a little different now because I see how much firepower you're bringing, so it's going to matter of if you can tag the side of a barn as I run.
That's good. The dice can affect a lot of things. You might end up having it where I'm just trying to shoot you, but I can't hit you. So we'll just have to kind of see how that plays out. Me, I never underestimate anybody. I never go into a fight thinking I'm gonna win this one. This is a foregone conclusion. I just go and I say, this person is a formidable player. I don't know them. I don't know what they're capable of. And you were saying a second ago about you've watched some of the videos and you notice that the play style is kind of chaotic. I never try to do the same thing twice, or I never try to do the same thing too often. I always try to keep the other person guessing. What's he going to do now? That kind of thing.
I am notorious for making very risky moves that have a 1 in 10 chance of providing success, but again, that's Capellan's notorious for doing jumping, trying those shenanigans.
Sure. Capellan fuckery. Well, Chris, I think it's going to be a real interesting game. I'm looking very forward to meeting you out on the battlefield. This has been a great chat. I greatly appreciate you being on Battletalk, brother. And I think we're going to put this out about a week or so before I put the actual episode out, so you'll be able to show this to your friends and show this to whoever it is that wants to see it. So I look very forward to seeing you, sir. Thank you so much.
Not a problem, and I appreciate your time, and I look forward to seeing you on the battlefield. And maybe future endeavors as well. I mean, we're not far away either, so.
That's right. Yeah, it's only like 2.5 hours. I was shocked how close it was.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a pretty decent group over here. It's just with everything the way it was, and being stuck indoors, you kind of start watching YouTube videos, and I got to watch an entire RPG of Battletech and found you, and I'm like, I'm excited for this.
All right.
I love seeing your shows, and I'll keep helping out as best I can to keep it going.
I greatly appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much.
Well, until I see you on the battlefield, let's hope our paint doesn't rub.
You take care of yourself, sir.
You too.
All right,
Bye.
All right, Mr. Glenn, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you so much for having us out here at Gear Gaming here in Fayetteville. We greatly appreciate you. So as I understand it, you have a little bit of history with Battletech, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Like, kind of how did you get started, and what's the history of Battletech here in this store, if any?
Well, honestly, I started off with the video games. This was the early ones, the beginning, the expansion of the Clan Wars.
Mech Warrior 2?
Yep.
Okay, I started with that one too, so kindred spirits.
But yeah, I got into it. I really like the tech. Like, I really like the world building in that, especially with the progression of technology throughout the timeline.
Sure.
I just got into it a lot and really enjoyed it.
Right on. And so how long have you been here at this particular location, and have you carried Battletech the whole time, or has that kind of just been a recent thing, or?
Well, I carried a lot more of it to begin with. We've been here about 7 years, but unfortunately through the distributors that we use, I use about 3 or 4 of them throughout the thing, and across the board it's actually become much, much harder to stock Battletech. Mainly most stuff that I get in is I'm able to get in when they do the 2-player, the new box set once a year. But even then, I get a limited number of that, and then once they're sold out, they're just sold out.
It's sold out. So how exactly did Gear Gaming get started?
Actually was a small resale shop next to my friend's tattoo shop that she was trying to get into, and I had a little bit of money at the time, so I helped her out with that, and then I decided to take that little resale shop and expand it and turn it into a game store. I had been running games and a bunch of other stuff for people for many years.
Sure.
So we weren't doing anything with the slot, so I was like, okay, let's give it a try.
Fantastic. So do you run other games here besides Battletech?
Oh yeah, pretty much. We will host anything that someone wants to play. Whether if they've got it and they just want to use our space, that was the case. But if we can get a small community on it, like in the case of Battletech, we'll support it the best we can.
Fantastic. I did have a look at your case over there, and you've got some particularly rare Magic the Gathering items that we noticed almost as soon as we walked in. The revised booster packs. How did those come into your possession?
So that one was a guy that comes in occasionally. He does buys and sells, but in this case, his friend found a box of their old cards from, once again, the early 90s. And they didn't know anything about it, didn't want it, so they ended up trading for it. Then he came and brought them to me, and also traded for some product and then some cash.
And Taylor was talking to me about the price tag on them, but I can't remember what it was. What's the price tag on those guys?
Depending on where you're looking, somewhere between $375 and $400 a piece.
Oof.
Well, they're old. They're 1993.
Sure, and you can get the dual lands in those, but I don't think you can get any of the Moxes or anything like that. You can get the Soul Ring, can't you?
Yes.
Okay, but not the Moxes or the Lotus or anything like that?
Those stopped on unlimited, and it's pretty much a high dollar lotto ticket. It's a big risk, big return. There's about an 8% chance you pull one of the dual lands, which is what they're sought out of those packs.
Right, and then of course if you didn't pull any dual lands that had blue in it, you might, don't you think you'd be kind of like on the upside down end there?
Well,
From the cost versus what you get back return on investment?
Well, several of them are over that cost. Of course, Volcanic Island is that one's going for $800, so
yeah,
at that point you've doubled your money. But yeah, and the thing about those packs is they're searchable. If I wanted to, I could go in there and take a flashlight and find out what's in each pack.
Ah, yes, I remember that, yeah.
Everyone around me, and they've known me for long enough, and they know that I won't do that, primarily because if someone actually opens a Volcanic Island out of those, I will get more mileage out of the hat.
Right, yeah, absolutely. So he hasn't skimmed them. All right, that's cool, So, okay, I understand that you have a little bit of history with our featured player. And I want you to tell me about that and tell me kind of a little bit of that story. How did that go?
Well, he just kind of wandered in one day, and we had some other people playing some games, and he, first of all, started just watching it, and then started joining in. Him and I have played a couple games before, and I've tried to help him with strategies, because there are where I'm not like really big into the Battletech strategies and whatnot. I do know just basic game strategy, especially for the style of game, whether it's this, Warhammer 40K. X-Wing was another good one that you can use just specific strategies for, and that applies across all of them.
Right. And you were saying that there was a particular tactic as you walked up to the table. And no spoilers, we're not doing that yet, but because we're right in the middle of the game right now. But you said you saw something and you knew exactly what was going on there. So without spoiling anything, what was that?
Okay, so this is one thing that I've told him that he keeps doing over and over again. Yeah, he's over there putting his hand in there. No, he's putting his head down. He knows exactly what this is. He always overextends and does not make sure that his main assault is properly supported. And I mean, that's completely understandable. A lot of people do that. Occasionally I'll get tricked into do that, but it's just something that you have to be mindful for is once you're pushing that spear in, they have to be supported. There's a reason why aircraft carriers don't go off on their own.
Right.
They are the most powerful ship, bar none.
Sure.
However, unsupported, they will get taken apart.
Sure. And he has a pretty interesting nickname, Guppy, as I understand it. Do you know anything about the history behind that?
That, unfortunately, I do not.
Okay, it's just a pretty interesting little nickname, and I was like, hey, because my nickname is back home is Hobbs, and I coined it after Hobbs the Tiger from Calvin and Hobbes. So I always like to see if anybody knows how that came about. I guess I should have asked him that on the interview, huh? Okay, so here's my next question. Aside from the shipping issues, which I think is kind of a universal thing at this point, where do you see Battletech going in the future? Like, because you've been around long enough to see, what it was like in the old days in the 90s and whatnot, and now you can see where it is now. Where do you think this juggernaut is going?
Well, and it kind of goes back to the availability issues. They're positioning themselves to primarily go online. But unless they start making it more accessible for the average person, I see it moving more to a digital space rather than a tabletop space.
Because there's a lot of digital record sheets and things like that you can use now. We use some of them on the show. It's called Flex Sheets. But I know there's a bunch of different tabletop simulators. You got Mega Mac. You got what's it called? Tabletop Simulator. Yeah. I don't know if the Tabletop Simulator has something where you got to pay to use it or something.
You have to buy it, but after you've bought it, you have it.
Oh, okay.
And it's not limited just to BattleTech or whatnot. The problem with that is that those companies at any time can do cease and desist and essentially have the mod deleted off the marketplace.
But that just doesn't seem like, to me anyway, that's something that Catalyst would do. I figure they would be like, hey, people are playing our game, and then they may end up wanting to buy a physical product and go into the store and do that.
Except for Catalyst doesn't, if I'm remembering the big convoluted web of all of this, I don't know that they are the ones that are only the ones that are going to be making the decision, because remember, they partnered with Hairbrain, that was bought by... Who bought Hairbrain? Does anybody remember offhand? Paragon. Paradox, yeah. So they may not be the ones ultimately making that decision.
It'll be interesting to see how it shakes out, I guess so. Yeah. But Len, I sure appreciate you joining us today. Thank you so much for having us here at the game shop. We greatly appreciate you, brother.
Not a problem. Have a good one.
Your ideas are intriguing to me, and I wish to subscribe to your newsletter.
Crowdfunding is when lots of people give you small amounts of money to help your passion project come to life.